Hi everyone, I'm going to show you just how I fuse the interfacing, but I'm also going to show you a couple of things that I didn't really talk about in the first video, sorry. So this is the difference between a non-fused piece, this is just thin cotton, and this is one that I have interfaced. So you can see, although you can tell a slight different color change. That's only because this now looks thicker, but this is obviously, because it's cotton, it's quite floppy compared to this one, which has now got a bit more of a firmer feel to it. It's still the lightweight fusible interfacing, but it just feels a bit more rigid. Well, I can hold that now, whereas if I do that, as you can see, it's just flopping. So that one, floppy, no interfacing. This one, interfacing. As I mentioned before, I use the silk setting on my iron. So I don't know, you'd have to look at your iron. Mine's 2 dots, and 2 dots works for me. Interfacing, no matter what interfacing you buy, it will tell you the correct heat setting. It'll also tell you whether to have it on a dry heat or a steam. I always use steam on mine. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but it just seems to work for me. So I'm going to just fuse these two. So I make sure that the heat dots are facing down. You can feel if you're not too sure, it will either feel slightly rough on one side, or it will have a reflective side and a dull side. So all I do is just match up the interfacing as best I can. I don't really concentrate that much when I'm cutting the interfacing. I make sure that the lining fabric is cut accurately and the exterior fabric is cut accurately, but with the interfacing I just kind of rough chop round. I'll show you in a minute why I do that. Because it's so thin, it just zooms around with a pair of scissors. With the iron, what I've found is just to take the heat off a little bit, just on the iron first, and then just circular motions, and you'll start to see, I don't know if you'll see this on the camera, but the interfacing will start to go a little bit more opaque. If I was using a patterned fabric, you'd start to see the pattern just that little bit more, and it's just where the heat dots are starting to melt. Always make sure that you do the corners, because the corners is usually if you haven't interfaced or haven't heated it quite right, the corners will start to flap. So that's done. As I say, it doesn't take long. I'm just going to flip it over. And although I've heated it from the other side, just out of habit, I think, I just do a quick press on the top. And you can see I haven't cut the interfacing exactly right. There's still some interfacing showing, but I can just trim that down. You can see on there. So I just trim it down so that it matches the lining. But the interfacing doesn't take long, and as you can see, that's now a lot sturdier, really. One of the other things I forgot to mention in my previous video, this particular bag is asking for a bag strap adjuster, and you'll see these on any normal adjustable strap bags, but the pattern I'm following also asks for D-clips. I don't have D-clips, D-rings, sorry. I buy like a bag of bag accessory clips, and they come with a range of different things. So this particular one, I'll get some more out. So this particular pack, I think I got it on Amazon, comes with these types of connectors, and those which you'll recognise, just a bag clip. But this pattern doesn't ask for that, it asks for just a bag adjuster and these rings. Because I don't have them, what I tend to do is just using a pair of, I don't know what they're called, thingies. I will just gently take off that middle bar, and then I'll have the clips, the rings, sorry, that I need for this particular bag pattern. I think you can buy packs of rings, O-rings, D-ring. I think that's a D-ring, obviously. That's a D-ring. But then you can get O-rings, the circular ones, and then you can get these rectangle ones. I just use what I've got, so I just take off these bars if I need to. The other thing I just wanted to I dropped one. Just wanted to touch on, and I mentioned in the last video, I've got a chopping mat, which I use. I found it quite helpful, especially when I'm cutting very straight pieces or rectangles, but I'm not that good at using one of these around bends, or especially with patterns that have got like an odd shape. So if you don't have a cutting mat, that's fine, because what I was using originally, and I still do it now, is my ironing board. And what I found with my ironing board, if I just show you, if I wanted to cut a pattern piece just using my ironing board, and I got my pattern piece set up ready, if you ever wanted to try this, as I say, it works for me, and then I upgraded to a cutting mat just for the straight edges. But what I do is pop pins in the ironing board. They go straight through unless you hit one of the metal frameworks on it, like that one. That one's just hit the framework. So you can see with any of my patterns, I've punched multiple holes just to find the right part. All I'm doing is just hitting the cage underneath, and I'm not actually finding a hole at all. We can fire it in at the side. The principle of it really is that I will pin the fabric directly into the ironing board, and then I can either do one of two things, and it might be helpful for you, especially if you're doing things like corners or even just a really odd shape. You can either, with just a biro or a fabric pen, is draw around your pattern, take all the pins out, and then you can just scissor cut. Or if you're confident with the scissors and you know that you've pinned really well, there, that's sliding in a bit better. Because it's pinned down to the ironing board, that fabric is not going to shift at all now. You can literally just run round with a pair of scissors, and because it's an ironing board, you can move the ironing board all over the place so that you're getting the right angle all the way around. It probably will damage your ironing board in the end, but if you don't have that much space for a cutting mat, this is a really good alternative if you're doing scissors. Don't use a rotary cutter on it, because you will just slash your ironing board cover. That's why my ironing board cover is still fairly new, because I've already damaged one already, but it does help. Another thing that you can do, if you've got a press mat, ironing mat, you can do the same thing. You can just poke your pins straight through to hold the pattern piece in place, and then just cut around that, and you can actually twist this around so that you can do a really good cut. So all of my fusing interfacing is now done. With the bag pattern that I'm going to follow with blue colour, I really do recommend, if you're going to go into making bags, to try blue colour. I think they're so good. Don't be put off with all of the cuts. It does take a bit longer, but it really does make a difference to the bag. And once your bag is made, it feels like a strong bag. This bag I'm going to make, based on the interfacing that I've done, and even just using scrim as opposed to foam, that bag will feel so solid at the end of it. You could put bricks in that bag and all that stitching will hold, just because the blue colour patterns really do, they really have thought out how to build the bag and all the structure involved. This particular bag has a zip in it as well. I'll show you how you can put a zip together. This zip is kind of halfway through the bag. The YouTube videos from Blue Colour do take you through that really well, but I'll show how I do it on a vintage machine because it doesn't have a zipper foot. So I'll show you how I do that on the vintage machine. But for now, what I've done is interfaced everything. Everything is now fused, and I've just piled everything up. So that is kind of the start of the bag. It takes the longest, but the more you can interface and use foam on bags, it as I say, it really does make a difference. And you can see just with that lightweight interfacing, you know, the interfacing itself doesn't look like much, but that makes such a difference to the fabric. If I didn't use any interfacing or any foam at all, this would just be a really floppy squidgy bag. But this one with everything that I've done and all the prep that's gone into it is going to make that a much more solid bag. So the next thing I'm going to do is start following the pattern and start getting everything stitched up. But I will show you videos, or I will video where there's difficult bits that you would probably find quite easy on a modern machine, but on a vintage machine you have to do it in a slightly different way. But that's the start of it. So that is everything cut and fused, ready for bag making.